Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast, where we explore cutting-edge strategies to keep teams human-centered, drive innovation, and empower you with the tools and insights needed to help your team excel and thrive in today's changing world. Your host is Dane Groeneveld, a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience enhancing team dynamics and innovation. What makes a conversation worth having, and how can better conversations build trust across teams? On this episode of the Future of Teamwork, Dane is joined by Cheri Torres and Jackie Stavros, co-authors of Conversations Worth Having and co-founders of the CWH Institute. They'll explore two deceptively simple practices that can transform the way teams communicate, collaborate, and problem solve. From shifting out of blame and reactivity to asking questions that generate insight and momentum, Cheri and Jackie share practical ways leaders can pause and ask themselves, what don't I know about this situation? They'll also discuss how small changes in language can reduce defensive behaviors, create space for curiosity, and help teams move from reaction to creation. And for leaders looking to drive performance and engagement, Cheri and Jackie make the case for having not just a to-do list, but a to-be list as well. Whether you're leading a team meeting, giving feedback, or navigating a challenging conversation, this episode offers you tools you can use right away. So, teamwork makes the dream work, and we're here to inspire your next collaborative breakthrough. Gather your team or put on your headphones, and let's dive in together.
Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast. My name's Dane Groeneveld, CEO of the Huddle 3 Group. And today I'm joined by Cheri Torres and Jackie Stavros. Cheri and Jackie have authored the book Conversations Worth Having. And they've also got the CWH Institute in play. So we're going to be diving into all that is entailed in their body of work, and particularly how that allows us to shift to more regenerative ways of working in teams and in communities, which I'm super excited for. So welcome to the show, Cheri and Jackie.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
You bet. So how did you come to find this body of work, to write the book, to be teaming up together? I'd love to hear the story.
You want to take that, Jackie?
Sure. Yeah. It's a 25-year venture, but I'll give you the short story. Cheri and I both began learning about this other AI 25 years ago called Appreciative Inquiry.
Yeah.
And it was probably in the late 90s, and we crossed pathways in early 2000 because we were both interested in bringing appreciative inquiry into everyday living.
Yes.
Our first attempt was to write a book called Dynamic Relationships. It was around 2004, 2005, and we thought at that time how we could use the appreciative inquiry, its 5D methodology, and unleash it in everyday living. About a decade later, so now I'm bringing you into like 2015, we wanted to write a second edition of the book. And what we learned through the coaching of our editor, Steve Parasante from Barrett Kohler, is it's not so much the relationships as it is the conversations. And it's the conversations that build relationships. And when we began our journey into this book, we realized the biggest aha was, think about this, from when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed in the evening, how much of your awake hours are you in conversations with yourself, on the phone, on your smartphone? Just you're constantly in conversations. So that's led us to Conversations Worth Having and how to use appreciative inquiry to fuel productive and meaningful engagement anywhere, anyplace, anytime. Cheri, do you want to add anything else to that journey?
No, only that it turned out to, again, Steve Parasante we showed up with 4 practices, and he goes, people won't do 4 practices. Yeah. I'd like it if you could give me 1, but you can't have more than 2.
That's fantastic.
And it's been true. It is such a simple practice, and it dramatically transforms conversations.
I'm so excited to dive in and learn more. I've found, we've been doing this show for about 3 years now, and, I get to work in different teams and businesses too. And one of the things that excites me about Appreciative Inquiry is that if I go in with very little relationship, to your point, or even awareness of the context of the problem, if I can exercise curiosity in the right way and spark some conversation, it's amazing what we can achieve.
Yes. Yeah. The world opens up.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also, I think, this big movement I've been working on with my coach, Christopher, who recommended us to be working together, that as a world, we became a little bit locked up in competition. And actually, there's so much more opportunity if we move past competition to creation across businesses, across communities, across vendors, whatever it might be. So that is energizing.
It's very energizing.
Yeah. Neat.
Someone just recently last week shared with me the difference between playing the finite game and the infinite game.
Yes.
And that the infinite game is all about the collaboration and the collectivity of how do we make sure the game doesn't end for anybody.
Yeah, that's right. As we get into it, I'm also going to ask you to shed light on a problem that my wife has identified I have, which is that we can't go anywhere without me starting to get curious and ask people questions. And so she's always like, can you just stop and focus on the family for a minute? Because you're always like trying to connect value and opportunity wherever you go. So maybe I've got a problem.
You should tell your wife Harvard Business Review did an entire issue that curiosity is the answer for business success and life success.
All right, I'll tell her that. But she's still going to tell me I need to work out how to turn it off.
Or turn it on to the family.
Yeah, good point. Switch direction. Yeah.
Stay curious. Don't turn it off. Just redirect.
Neat. So do you want to get started by jumping into how to have conversations worth having, what your two methods are? Sure.
Let's just start by imagining a 2x2 grid.
Uh-huh.
And if the vertical continuum of that grid on the top is the word appreciative. Mm-hmm. And appreciative in this context means conversations that add value, or they value people, opportunities, and situations. On the other end of the continuum is depreciative.
Right.
And those conversations devalue. And all of our conversations fall on that continuum somewhere. And then on the horizontal axis, we're either making statements or asking questions.
Mm.
And so we can map our conversations to that. And if you think of the horizontal line as, quote, the line.
Yes.
Conversations below the line are never worth having.
No.
Because you're either making statements that devalue people or you're asking questions in a way that really carries judgment and an agenda, which also devalues the person or the situation. And the topics you might want to be covering may be incredibly important, and the idea is address them from above the line.
Yes.
Where you can have conversations worth having.
I love that.
And so if you look at that grid, the conversations that are inquiry-based and add value, outcomes focused, are conversations worth having.
That's it. I love that.
So ask questions and focus your conversations on what you want more of, what kind of outcomes you want.
Yes.
And on clarifying a situation and then moving towards what is it that we want instead of this.
Oh, I love that.
And we've also learned that the outcomes are, especially if you're working in teams, is these types of conversations build trust, surface assumptions. It creates a shared understanding of what each team member is thinking about, and it inspires possibility and brings in new knowledge.
So it's kind of harvesting the energy and curiosity of everyone on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And allowing people to get to a place of shared understanding before they start diving into moving forward or resolving problems. It's kind of that diverge before you converge.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, because what I found working with therapists, coaches, friends, is that so many leaders get stuck jumping in to fix things based on an emotional sensation or instinct. And so they end up fixing the wrong thing or fixing it in the wrong way and not really taking the time to see, hear, value all of the great people and insight and energy that's around them.
Yes. And often they're trying to do the right thing for people, but they're guessing at what the fix is. And if they were to just ask the teams, ask the people, what would motivate you? How would you like to be more engaged? They're going to get answers that will actually fit what people are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it also teaches you not to, as a leader of a team, not to rush into answers. And because I used to like to rush in and just save people. And use generative questions to bring out the wisdom in the room. Or what's the real problem? Let's not fix something that's a symptom. So that's really important.
Yeah. I remember reading a great article, it may have been an HBR article, that talked about reframing problems. And it was like, hey, don't just run in and solve the problem that's immediately apparent, because you may be able to reframe the whole thing, and maybe it's redesigning the way the shop's laid out, or maybe it's actually changing a technology that you use versus like canceling a business line or removing a team member from the team.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's that what are we trying to do instead of fixing what's already here, and what's already here might be the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
In reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or limiting.
So tell me more about the Institute. How are you expanding this kind of mindset and this work through your Institute and activities in the community and with members?
Well, when we started the Institute, we did these boot camps. We went out to write a book to bring Appreciative Inquiry into daily conversations. And somebody said, can you teach us this material? So we put together a conversation boot camp.
Okay.
And then we put together a boot camp on strategic conversations. How do you do this in organizational life? And then from there, people were like, can we use your material and train other people? So we're like, sure. So then we began to certify people.
Yeah.
And it just grew beyond belief. And we brought in a third partner, Kelly Stewart, and we created the Conversations Worth Having Institute. And we took our boot camps we were doing and we brought them on-demand self-learning, because some people don't have the time.
Wow.
Like before COVID, we were doing the boot camps in person. After COVID, we began taking everything online like the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And then recently we put together a CWH Foundation program. In 30 minutes, we have this quick start to foundations of you want to learn this on your own. Then we expanded into quick start guides. How do you do this with performance reviews and evaluations? So we keep evolving based on what people are asking us to do to bring conversations worth having into their lives, into their organizations and communities. We have blogs.
Yeah.
There. Lots going on.
A lot. Yeah, you guys are busy. And clearly the world needs a lot of this, but I like that last point there that you said about bringing it into performance reviews, because a lot of people fall into the trap of I'm busy and I don't need another thing to do. But if you're allowing people to reframe the stuff that they're doing already anyway, then that creates a huge amount of lift without additional burden on a team.
Well, and it turns those performance reviews and evaluations into like mutual learning opportunities about what am I doing really well that you love? So I'm going to keep doing, and what else can I do? How do I grow? How do I evolve? And it's not just a one-way conversation. As the leader, I might be saying, I want you to grow in this way. And I might say, I'd love to grow in that way. And could I also grow in this way? Because here's why, so it's this, we're mutually moving and learning towards helping one another evolve instead of seeing evaluations as punitive.
Yes. Yeah. I've always felt strongly about in any transactional relationship, whether it's employment or with a customer or with a vendor, that we can get a little bit stuck on the efficiency.
Yes.
And actually just taking that little bit of a moment to understand how do we each help each other advance, get better, have more impact. It goes a long way. Now, sadly, a lot of people don't, because they're busy, they don't create time for that inquiry. So, where are some exciting kind of examples that you've seen play out recently that you may not have expected to see, between two different parties?
Where I see it playing out as a professor, where I teach traditional or non-traditional students, and non-traditional students are students who are working, have families, and going back to school, is when you give them feedback, it has to be, what are they doing right? And this is harder to do. Instead of telling you all the things you're doing wrong, it's what do you need to do better to grow and learn? And that's what we teach people. It's called feed forward.
Got it.
It's easy to tell people what they're doing wrong. You have to really think about it and frame it to say, here's what you need to do to grow and do better.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's triggering to live in the past, but it pulls you forwards if you're like, hey, the next time you run into a situation like this, could you try doing this first? That's far more.
Yeah, and I never edit or grade in red ink anymore, because that closes somebody down. It's blue or purple or a bright color, so that they'll open their minds.
That said, I learned so much from red ink in the early part of my life and professional career. I'm a very visual person, so I was like, oh, that's loud and clear. I got it.
That's great.
That red ink.
It's very cool. So, do you find that most of the people that are doing the boot camps or the certification or the learning are applying this in the employment relationship, or are you starting to see it more in not-for-profit, community-based activities? Where are conversations worth having starting to kind of evolve?
We've actually been stunned at the breadth of people that show up.
Yeah.
And in our trainings, it's education, organizations,
healthcare,
some nonprofits, healthcare, a lot of coaches and consultants, trainers are like, people don't know how to have conversation, but one of the things that we find most consistent is people will email us after a training, and they went home and they used the practices with a teenager. And they're like, oh my God, I have had the first conversation I've had with my son in I can't tell you how long. And he just opened up.
Yeah.
And I just earlier this week had a lead pastor at a church who said, I have been depressed and haven't been able to find anything positive to focus on. And somebody told me, read Conversations Worth Having. And I just finished reading it. And for the first time, I have hope. And then 2 days later, she sent another email and she said, oh my goodness, I did this with my daughter. And it just was the most amazing conversation. And then I had a conversation with a parishioner. This works. It's so easy.
Which is so relieving too.
Yes. And rewarding for us, but also for people to realize these two practices are really simple.
Yeah.
You just have to remember. Remember to use them.
And did the practices take prep time, or are they things that you can just use in a live fire environment? Hey, I bumped into someone on a plane and I'm going to start a conversation.
Especially if you're one who doesn't want to engage in a conversation or know how to start, you can ask questions. And one thing we learned when we went from the first to the second edition is the importance of, before you jump into asking questions or framing, is tuning in. And tuning in is when you pause, take a deep breath, and you're genuinely curious. These practices are easier to do. And they're not artificial, they're authentic.
And when you pause and take that deep breath, is there like a a mantra or a reset of focus or a question you asked yourself before you dive in?
There could be any number of them, but if you, it's like catching yourself, or if somebody says something and it really triggers you and you're ready to either pounce or shut down. If in that moment you pause and take a deep breath, both of those things actually start to rebalance our nervous system.
Yep.
And then the brain actually kind of opens back up and we can get curious. And asking yourself questions is a great place to start. Like, what don't I know? Is there another story for what just happened besides the one I made up?
Oh, I like that.
I wonder what it is. And then you can ask. So tell me, what did you mean by what you just said?
That's a great question.
And I also think it's like the gift that keeps on giving, in the sense that when you learn conversations worth having to use in a professional setting, you'll see transformation. Then you'll try it out on your kids, your significant other.
Yeah.
That's the second gift. I have found lately it really helps in my internal dialogue. And that's a really big gift, so that, most of your negative self-talk is to yourself, not to your family.
Correct.
Or organizations. But it really helps with that internal inner dialogue.
And that's huge in a teamwork environment, because if you've got 12 people on a team and everyone's stressed, they've got home life issues, they've got social media issues because everyone's dealing with lots of statements in that environment right now.
Yes.
And then they've got work issues, like I've got my task to do and I don't know what that person really wants of me or when I'm going to get this done. If you can help everyone manage their self-talk, then they're bringing a lot more energy to the table when the conversations start to.
Yes. And we can waste a lot of time with the self-talk.
Yeah.
Or the guessing about what someone wants, instead of just going and asking, can you be more clear? I want to make sure I deliver what you're looking for. And by the way, when do you need it? When's the last possible time you need it?
Yeah.
Is there any wiggle room?
Yeah. It's almost like turning it into a bit of a negotiation to land on a better output or outcome.
Yes. And if I could, a negotiation sounds like we're arguing for different positions, like one's going to win, one's going to have to sacrifice, as opposed to, hey, we both want the best quality work to emerge here. How do we make sure that happens? Because the person asking you to do something doesn't necessarily know how this fits in with everything else you're doing.
Yes.
And so they might be asking, hey, what's on your plate right now? Would this be possible? And
Yes.
so it becomes kind of, we're co-creating what exactly the outcome's going to be and when it's going to be due.
I
and
like that.
It creates a sense of, in the team that's doing that, there's a sense of trust. There's a sense of, I care about you and you're being able to do your best work, and I care about getting to you what you need in a timely fashion. Just recognizing everybody is absolutely in the same place in terms of, we want to do our best and.
Yes. And it's interesting how language matters there too, because you're right, negotiation you can think of it as a winner or a loser, being present. And also, Jackie, on your point, what did you mean by what you just said? In certain cultures, that can be deemed to be a rather confrontational or aggressive statement, right? Because a lot of cultures are kind of smile and nod. And they don't like to challenge and ask people to represent what they've just said, because they're like, I don't want to disrespect you. So there's a lot of work to be done there, depending on who you're working with and where they're coming from.
Yeah, and again, putting that in the context of, I'm not sure I fully understood what you said. Can you try again?
Yes.
I really want to understand. I don't want to jump to conclusions here.
Yes. It's almost like the go slow to go fast model too, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And I think that's especially true with teams. If the teams are really aligned and caring for each other and believe that everybody has one another's back, you can go so much faster than if people are protecting themselves and the team's going to be more creative and more productive. And
yeah. We had Michael McCarroll on the podcast from Team Radery, and he talked about the NASCAR pit crew. And he said if everyone optimizes for the efficiency in their task, fueling the car, replacing the tires, it actually takes the team longer to get the car back on the track. Whereas if everyone stops and realizes what each person needs, then it can be like, hey, I'm going to put the first half of the fuel in, then I'm going to stop while you come in with the tires, and I'm going to finish refueling while you're doing this.
Oh,
and it totally changes the process.
That's very cool. Yeah, that is very powerful.
But we don't take that time in our teams.
No.
Do you sense that there's a way to, with your two principles, to almost operationalize it into the ways of working? This is how we have meetings. This is how, I know you mentioned performance reviews, but if you're working with a CEO or a leader that is just absolutely aligned with this approach, how deep can they take it in an organization?
You want to run with that, Jackie?
Yeah. So when I think of stepping into a meeting as a leader, with your team, you have a to-do list. You should also have a to-be list. And a to-be list is, how do I need to be for my team today? And what kind of dialogue do we have to have? And think about maybe there is a program or a product that is going to have to launch, even though the team doesn't want it to launch. We're going to frame it to talk about how do we move forward with this, not arguing why we shouldn't do this or how we disagree with senior leadership, but learning to ask the questions that we have to move forward with this. So how are we going to contribute as our team to the organization?
That's
to
a
be
brilliant
the best we can, as well as to have our to-do list.
Yes. I like that to-do list and to-be list. That almost feels like it's a journal waiting to be published.
Yes.
You just come in every day, put them side by side.
Align it with organizational values.
Yeah.
I think there's another way that it's operationalized for organizations, and that really comes into play with our strategic conversations boot camps, where there are some specific kinds of conversations that are really valuable to have for, if you've got a new project that's opening, if you want to do some sort of organizational change, you want to engage people in strategic conversations very specifically. We use the traditional Appreciative Inquiry methodology. Are you familiar with the 5 Ds?
No. You want to run through that?
Sure. The Appreciative Inquiry is really grounded in, let's move forward, bringing the best of who we are, and what makes that possible with where are we going? What are we trying to achieve together? And then what are the opportunities to achieve that future vision that we shared? And then how are we going to hit the ground running and deploy?
Yeah.
And so the process is really engaging people in 4 Ds. Discovery. So they're one-on-one interviews around core strength stories, conditions that make that possible, opportunities, and visioning. The second D is dream.
I like that one.
And then the third.
And is that one-to-one, the dream, or can that be
The
collective?
dream is small group. So
Small
it's
groups.
paired interviews. And Appreciative Inquiry early on was consultants going in and they did the interviews and but it kind of morphed into, if you bring the whole organization or representation of the organization together in conversation, start with paired interviews and then move to small groups of 6 to 8 people where they kind of look at the data in the interviews and bring that forward. And then each small group using the data creates the vision, and visions get shared into a collective. And then it's looking at, so given this, what are the opportunities that surface that we want to take advantage of? And people self-organize around, where's their passion? What are they excited to bring forward?
Nice.
and then begin prototyping immediately, getting feedback on prototypes, and then taking it back out. So when you're doing systems change, you don't have to go get buy-in after you've decided what the change is.
It's all part of the process.
Right. Everybody
Yeah, okay.
owns it. And then the other framework that we teach and use is actually from Jackie's graduate work. It's called SOAR. Do you want to explain what it is?
Yeah, so think of the 5 Ds that Cheri mentioned as a methodology. SOAR is a framework. It's a framework that for your strategic thinking, planning, or leading is let's look at the strengths. What are the possibilities? O is for opportunities, A is for aspirations, and R is for results. And it's really important to, if you want people, as Cheri said, to be open and diverge, you start from a place of strength. And then they think of possibilities, which are opportunities. And then you ask about their aspirations. And to move from aspirations into results, you say, what are the 3 to 5 strategic initiatives or the things we need to be doing to move us forward?
Fascinating. I particularly want to dive into aspiration because I've had this conversation with a few people. We had Esther Zeladon on the show, and she talked a lot about people's individual aspirations. And yet some organizational development folks will say, we want the team to be bigger than the individual. So we're afraid of individual aspirations in the team. So how do you kind of hold that and work with it?
Well, if you think of appreciative inquiry, it begins from our conversation to the collective. So it's shared aspirations.
Shared. So it can be an individual aspiration that is acknowledged and shared or in common with others.
Right. So it's the aspiration of the whole, and wholeness is really important.
Got it. That's really interesting.
And I think also to take into account, it's instead of either or thinking, the both and thinking, because if every individual in the organization has aspirations that can be met within their workplace, they're going to be more committed. And if those aspirations, and they should, if they can meet them in the workplace, the odds are it is also contributing to the collective aspiration of what's happening.
I agree with that. I think that's powerful. I think maybe that the both end allows you, kind of like Dan Pink used to talk about, there's big P purpose at the company level and small P purpose at the individual level. Maybe there's big A aspiration and small A aspiration.
Yes. And I also want to mention, I mentioned 4 Ds. The fifth D in the 5 Ds is to define, and that happens before you bring all the people together. It's like, what are we doing? What are we bringing together people for? So it's really clarifying the outcome that you want. What's the positive frame for this coming together? And then creating the structure and the design of the 4 Ds. I just wanted to make sure somebody's listening. They're going to say, what's the 5th D?
We'll put it in the show notes. We'll even do a visual with you guys. Yeah, because I had it written down. So define, discovery, dream, design, and destiny. Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes. But it is a fascinating piece. And I know before the show, we were talking about what's the thing that excites you about the future of the way we work in teams. And you shared that we move from the top-down hierarchy of think, tell, do to this more inclusive wholeness in teams where people are part of strategy and part of the corrections or the disruptions that are going to happen.
Yeah, I think sometimes as leaders, we think the strategy is for senior leaders in the board. You've got to invite the people who are closest to your suppliers and the customers into these conversations.
Yeah.
And even inviting your customers and suppliers into those conversations also.
Yeah, that would be fun, particularly if you did it somewhere in an interesting location, virtual or physical. And in my world, I'd probably introduce costumes, maybe aliases in there too.
I love it.
It's got to be fun.
Yeah, it has to be. That's super cool.
So I want to also, with the SOAR, I want to also bring it into, you mentioned meetings.
Yes.
And There are lots of organizations now, teams do agile stand-up meetings.
Yes.
And I know that some of our clients have turned some of their stand-up meetings into a rapid SOAR. And so each
interesting.
person says, what were my strengths this week? What opportunities do I have that I might need some support on from another member of the team?
Mm-hmm.
What are my aspirations this week, and what results am I aiming for? And then there's an ask and an offer at the end of it to support each other. And it's very quick.
Yeah, we call it a quick SOAR.
Yeah, quick thought. And so you said there's an ask and an offer at the end. Does the ask and the offer, how does that play out? So if I'm in a room with 3 or 4 team members, who makes the ask, who makes the offer?
Well,
Each person makes an ask, and if they say, I've got it this week,
Yeah.
but who needs help, I can offer. So each person has an opportunity to say, I need help with this, and 2 or 3 people might say, I got time, I can help with that.
Yeah.
Just a way to make room for that collaboration that otherwise doesn't come up because, I should do this myself.
yeah. People need resources. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's money. They need help.
Yeah.
Or other people.
Or thinking partner.
Yeah.
And we're not good at asking for that because we've got our sort of corporate armor on. We're very guarded often.
Yes. And that's
Yeah.
why making it a formal process gets people much more comfortable.
And will you make that a weekly process with an intact team, or can that be something that you kind of rotate through other teams and kind of
Do whatever
cross-functionally?
you want.
Anywhere,
Cool.
anytime.
Cool.
You can also flip the instead of asking each person what their strengths were, you can say, especially if it's an organization that has embedded strengths into the way they operate,
Yeah.
and people know one another's strengths, you can ask, who saw Dane using his strengths this week? And 2 or 3 people say, yeah, I saw him doing this, or he worked with me on this, and his strengths of blah, blah came through. And so it's a way of acknowledging and affirming each other also.
Yeah. That's neat. Actually, we've used an exercise in the past that we call the plus delta, where you just quickly go around. You've seen it? Yeah. And I think that creates a huge amount of focus on how you can leverage the best of someone's abilities towards a common objective. Yeah. Very cool. I know pre-show as well, we were talking about control and the sort of the scary side of control, which is that as a leader out there running a business, if all of a sudden I've always run strategy centrally and run innovation and continuous improvement centrally, and now my team are asking every day to be involved in strategy, involved in continuous improvement. They're using AI, even when I don't know as a leader that they're doing it to improve processes or methods. How do I, as a leader, approach this so that people aren't distracted from the day job that needs to be done to keep the business running, but that we are creating appropriate sort of boundaries, guardrails, and even spotlights to shine a light on the good things that are happening out there that we may not be planning and intending for?
That's a great question. And it was something I was talking to a CEO about the other day. We were talking about tariffs. One day there's tariff, one day there's not tariff. And these CEOs are really struggling. This CEO said he has learned to control what you can and take good care of your people and let go of what you can't control and focus the energy on the quality of your conversations. That's where your influence begins as a leader, is to know what I can control. And that's where you grow from and let go of the things that you just can't control.
Yeah. And I guess that would allow you to, if you're having quality conversations, particularly if you're using that kind of feed forward method, hey, next time you do this, I'd like to see if you could do it this way, and check in with Bob or Jenny over there. You rather than setting out a whole framework for this is how we're going to do it, you keep it quite fluid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also in that that piece of like engaging people in strategic conversations is usually like during like in a larger strategic conversation, like in using the 5Ds, is a larger, like once every 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And then it's people going on about doing their jobs aligned with where is it that we're going, but continuing then for teams to be having their own strategic conversations around how are we aligning, how are we achieving our goals, and what are the strengths of what we're doing? Are there opportunities for us to improve? Could we be more efficient? Could we be more creative? Just kind of keeping those strategic conversations alive in really small ways, but in ways that are focused on the work you're doing in the business.
Yeah, I like the focus on the work. So that brings up another one, which I would throw out there. I've run into it myself before. If you've got a team that I call them the academics, they love the theory, they love the debate, but they don't like putting something on paper, going to your sort of prototyping that you can actually start working on and getting feedback. Like how do you move those people into the action cycle?
I look at it, for Lawrence Tech, where at the university, we have a motto since 1932 of theory and practice. Mm-hmm. It's a both and. And what's really important when you're using the 5D cycle, we're designing prototypes right now.
Right
now.
Not
just dreaming about them or discovery. We're designing that and getting feedback and feed forward from the people in the room, and also assigning co-champions to follow up from the people that are not in the room that you have to bring into the conversations.
So if that's a customer or a vendor that's not there, they can go and bring them in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Or another organization member that either couldn't make it or this is a subset of the whole.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I would imagine constraints become important in prototyping. Hey, team, you've got 1 week. I need it in 1 page of, that we can actually take out and explain to people so that we can get feedback.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. And I would imagine psychological safety comes into bear a lot then too, because a lot of people that have been working in a culture where perfection is the norm, you need a 7-page business case for every small change.
Yeah. And I think the process, if you're doing an appreciative inquiry process, the process generates a sense of safety. And so do the 2 practices. Because you're inviting people in, you're inclusive, you're moving towards something you both want, as opposed to, are we getting this right?
Yeah.
And the whole process of the prototyping and the feed forward is like, we don't need to get it right now. We need to get our ideas vaguely on paper and get some feedback. What do people think? What are we missing? What's important? And then we go redesign again. And I think also about the question about leadership and the potential for leaders to feel like, I'm going to lose control and they're all going to like take off and run my business for me. I think 2 things. One, when leaders have an opportunity to actually see how brilliant and committed people are in the organization, it changes their mindsets. And the second thing is, if a leader has in their thinking process, never do anything about somebody without them included. It's somewhere in it. So don't do anything about me without me. Then it can guide, who do I need to have in this conversation?
Got it.
David Cooperrider, who wrote the introduction to our book, one of my favorite quotes in the introduction is that organizational lives and the lives of others flourish or flounder one conversation at a time.
That's really powerful. So you said flourish or
flounder. They flourish or they're going to flounder.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to move in one direction or the other.
Yeah. But nothing stays static for very long.
No. No, or it dies.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess a bad conversation can lead to more bad conversations too. So it becomes a movement. Yeah.
Yep. deficit-based thinking.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's super cool. Well, I mean, I'm so I've taken about 4 pages of notes here. I'm so ready to take some of these methods. What have I not covered today that you would have hoped to have covered? So for a team that's out there saying we want to deploy the 2 practices and we want to get rolling, like how should they be getting started? Is it reach out to you all? Is it start with the book? I'm curious.
I would say they could start with the book. If they want a more rapid start, I would suggest starting with our Foundations course, which is 30 minutes. It's 5 short videos that gives you the foundations of what this is about. And they can start trying it immediately. There's a guidebook that comes with it that has, exercises and ways to implement and start practicing immediately. The concepts are simple enough that teams start using the language. They'll start saying, "Oh, I'm below the line. Let me do a do-over." Or
love it.
They'll say, wait, we need to name the issue and clarify it first. We're in the middle of the woods and we don't know where we are. So the language gives them an easy way to regroup instead of blame and go after each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Avoiding the blame and shame is huge for teams.
And I think I sent Alicia a coupon.
Yeah.
That your listeners can use for that Foundations course if they want to.
Well, we'll definitely connect on that, and I'm going to go and take the course. I may even get my wife to take it so she doesn't beat up on me as heavily on my Appreciative Inquiry on plane trips. But no, that sounds excellent. And we'll put all of your contact details in, but if anyone's listening and they want to reach out to you all, Cheri and Jackie at CWH Institute, or find the book, Conversations Worth Having, where should they be looking?
Oh, that's easy. The short answer is cwh.today, or you can spell it out, Conversations with an S Worth Having Today.
Excellent. We'll make sure to add that in the show notes.
Wonderful.
And I'm fascinated. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to walk me through it. I think you've created a bit more structure around what I've been playing with for many years. So I'm looking forward to taking that structure so it can scale a little bit further.
Well, you're welcome then.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for inviting us and having us on your podcast. It's a joy. It's been a pleasurable conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Dane.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Cheri.
Thank you for joining us. Remember that by embracing vulnerability, trusting our intuition, and approaching challenges with compassion, we not only strengthen our teams, but also pave the way for a future where collaboration thrives. If you're hungry for more insights, strategies, and research on collaboration, head over to thefutureofteamwork.com. There, you can join our mailing list to stay updated with the latest episodes and get access to exclusive content tailored to make your team thrive. Together, we can build the future of teamwork. Until next time.